Good morning. We're going to get started. It's the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 190152, 190153, 190154, 190155, and resolution number 190164. Mr. Stitt, please read the titles of the bills and resolution.
Bill number 190152, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2020 through 2025 inclusive. Bill number 190153, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2020 capital budget. Bill number 190154, an ordinance adopting operating budget for fiscal year 2020. Bill number 190155, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Tax by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Resolution number 190164, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia, covering fiscal years 2020 through 2024 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2019, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this Council approved by the Mayor on January 3, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Stitt. Today we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2020, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal 2020 through fiscal 2025. Today we will hear testimony from the following city departments: Department of Revenue, Board of Revision of Taxes, and Revenue Tax Bills. Mr. Stitt.
First person to testify is
Frank Breslin.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, President Clark and members of City Council. I am Frank Breslin, Revenue Commissioner. I would like to thank the members of City Council for their ongoing support as the department collects the money needed to provide city and school district services and the efforts of continued expansion of our assistance programs and payment plans for taxpayers and water customers. To continue those efforts, the Department of Revenue is requesting $32,879,233 from the general fund in fiscal year 2020. This is a $1,627,742 increase over fiscal year 2019. This includes $1,233,742 in Class 100 to provide for salary increases for District Council 33 staff and to add 21 new positions for TIPS replacement and 1 new tax analyst position for our commercial activity license program. This will assist with the implementation efforts to support this technological initiative. The remainder of the increase will fund outside appraiser services for expert reports and testimony when property owners contest appraisals for real estate tax purposes and support services for TIPS replacement. Joining me today are Michelle Bethel, Deputy Revenue Commissioner, and Marissa Waxman, First Deputy Revenue Commissioner. We're pleased to answer your questions on Revenue's fiscal year 2020 budget.
Okay. Tell you, the word is getting out among the city departments. The testimony is getting shorter and shorter. I'm loving it. Thank you. I got a first couple of questions, but first, I just want to say I want to thank you and your team, your willingness and ability to dispatch individuals out to functions. We always have a series of initiatives and meetings, basically get down to community meetings across our district, and I'm assuming that are happening in other parts of the city. And you've always had individuals there that have been extremely helpful in giving information out to community residents and providing assistance, actually on the spot, giving assistance in terms of starting the process of applications of forms for tax relief programs. I really want to say how much I appreciate. And I want to also appreciate you, thank you for working actually with Councilman Dama and myself when we were having a discussion around sequestration. And you worked with us to make sure that we were on point and getting people engaged both in tax relief programs and trying as best possible to get the city's taxes collected. So I want to thank you for your work on that. In your testimony, you talk about the one-year collection rate of real estate is 96.1, and it's clearly appears to be trending in the right direction. Realistically, is there a likelihood that we can increase this percentage? And if so, how do we get there?
Well, I think, it's indicative of our collection strategy and our relief programs. It's the strategy is really working, and we've been trending, as you said, we've been trending in the right direction. Our preliminary numbers indicate that we'll continue to move in that direction, and we believe that, again, the preliminary numbers indicate like 96.4 is what we're anticipating. So.
Okay. All right. We're far cry from where we were. In your budget detail, you show a $1.2 million increase in Class 100 related increase in salary and 21 additional positions. In your testimony, it describes these positions are supporting the integrated tax system, ITS, and the commercial activity revocation program. What positions in your department that you're adding, and how will these positions improve your department's performance in that respect? And you can just detail the goals and the programs that I've outlined.
Right. So one of our, the ITS, an integrated tax system, is really the biggest initiative for this department. And, our legacy system, which is over 30 years old, is really holding us back from getting to the next level. And we're in the process now. We have RFPs out, we have received proposals, and we're looking at moving forward with getting this new system. As part of that process, we've met and reviewed systems in other jurisdictions and, basically getting best practices so that this will be a successful initiative. And what we've learned is that we really need a dedicated team, a team dedicated to the implementation, not do your regular job and work on the implementation. That's been a problem in some jurisdictions, and they've given us the heads up to that. Other jurisdictions that used a dedicated team have stressed how important that was to their success. So basically what we're doing is we're taking 20 positions from the department, key staff that we think will be key leaders to this initiative, and we're going to move them onto the project full time. And then we're going to do essentially like a waterfall of a backfill. So we're not backfilling necessarily their position. We're going to move staff up into position. So to the degree that, we take a manager, we'll move a supervisor up, backfill up, and fill at the lowest position, and that helps us, be fiscally responsible with this process, but that's what we're doing. And that, we're hoping, will lead to a very successful implementation. It's a several-year implementation, could be 2-3 year implementation, it'll be incremental, but that will really change the whole customer experience for revenue. I mean, the way taxpayers communicate with us will change. Taxpayers will be able to do everything through a taxpayer portal. They'll be able to see their payments. They'll be able to see where payments are applied, when taxes are due. It'll be much easier to interact with the city, and it'll be much easier also for us on the city side, so that's the customer facing. It'll just be a total improvement from customer facing. And then from the city side, it'll be a vast improvement. Right now our system is so old that programming is a real challenge to us in getting programmers, because it's essentially a computer language that's not really taught in schools anymore, and it's not cutting edge. So it's hard for us, and it's also hard to do the programming. Things are kind of hard-coded into the system. So something that would seem like a very simple change in a modern platform is very difficult, and that holds us back. So we're really excited about this, and we know that this is really the future of revenue, and this will really revolutionize the customer experience. But in order to do that, we need to dedicate a staff to this implementation. It's a significant implementation.
So you're saying that the staff needs as it relates to these programmers, they're difficult to find people to qualify for those positions?
Yes.
Is that an industry-wide, or is it just regional? Is it Philadelphia?
It's every jurisdiction that I go to, regional and national events of tax administrators, and every jurisdiction that has a old legacy system similar to ours is experiencing the same challenge. And it's why so many jurisdictions have over the last few years or are now moving to a new integrated tax system.
Okay, great. Your department, I'm looking at your participation rate and your MBE, WBE, DBE, and your numbers are pretty successful. I think you're at a 52% rate for professional service contracts. Can you talk to me about what you've done to get that number in terms of outreach, to have a diverse contracting record? Is there something in particular that we may be able to explain to other departments or other people?
We've been working really closely with OEO.
OEO?
Yeah, and sitting down and meeting with them periodically and going through our numbers and going through what we can do to improve those numbers. I don't think we have any secret kind of magic potion there, but it's just really paying attention to it and working closely with OEO.
And you got to be committed to making sure that that happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. One last question. So at a recent hearing, you stated that a large percentage of the delinquent tax accounts are attributed to non-Philadelphians, and I'm actually not surprised by that. Actually, in doing some research, we're doing some research on individuals that are buying properties in gentrified areas, and it's overwhelming number of the purchasers are from outside of the city of Philadelphia, and that's this ongoing debate we're having with a number of people who have expressed their interest in property acquisition and disposition. We'll get to that. Can you tell me the percentage of tax delinquents that live out of the city? And if you don't have that available right now, I understand.
For real estate tax, I know the number is 11%.
11%?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know for other taxes, but that's the number, and we can look to see if we can get you that. But for real estate tax, non-Philadelphia owners who are delinquent is 11%.
Yeah, and then we recently, I guess a couple of years ago, we were authorized by the General Assembly an initiative that allows us to go after other assets or something. If you can explain
That's correct. That's correct. And we're doing that right now. We continue to do that. So basically what that means is if we have a non-Philadelphia owner who owns multiple properties in Philadelphia that are delinquent, we can actually take that lien and attach it to that person, and then all of the properties are then affected, as well as that personal residence outside of Philadelphia. I mean, the kind of the example that's been used before in a hearing is somebody who may live in a big home in the suburbs and have rental properties here and they're not paying taxes. Now we can actually get a lien on that suburban property. So that means they can't sell that property, they can't refinance that property unless they satisfy the delinquencies in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's been extremely helpful. I want to thank the state for giving us the authority. I think Councilwoman Parker was working on that with a number of our former colleagues up there. That was
that's been helpful.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Greenlee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
And also want to thank you and your office for the help you provide to me and the staff when we call with problems. Appreciate that. Just on, and you touched on payment agreements, but in numbers, do you know how many payment agreements overall, or just in real estate, however you want to break it down, that you've had over, say, the past year? And does that increase, I guess, is what I'm really interested in. Yeah.
Hi, Marissa Waxman, First Deputy Revenue Commissioner. So off the top of my head, I can tell you about the owner-occupied payment agreements for real estate. As of the end of December 2018, we had 11,472 owner-occupied payment agreements, and around 85% of those were in our Tier 4 and 5, so those are our lowest income, most vulnerable homeowners. In addition to that, we had 15,000 standard real estate tax payment agreements. And so all told, there's about 26,000 real estate tax payment agreements right now. We've got around 63,000 total delinquent accounts, so that's a really good share of those folks who, that money's still delinquent, but they're compliant with us. So it's like, even if they're not all the way up to speed and there's a problem, they had a whoopsie doodle, they can still get into those payment agreements. I don't have the business tax agreements off the top of my head, but we can certainly provide that.
Okay. And is that a significant increase from other years of people entering into agreements?
So it is, particularly in the UPA, it is a notable increase that we had since the prior year. And what a lot of the changes, though, that went into UPA this year, we think actually it's going to make it easier for folks to stay in. A lot of what we used to have was a lot of churn, where folks would get in, not be able to keep up on their current taxes, fall out, break it, get into a new agreement. With the changes that went in, because folks at those Tier 4 and 5 can roll in their current year automatically, we'll do it for them unless they tell us not to, we're going to see a lot less churn. We also, though, have been making sure that, folks who aren't compliant get information sort of early and clearly about how to stay in. So we think that we're going to be able to keep folks in the program and keep increasing the folks who are in there.
And do you know how much in revenue that has brought in, or could you get that?
So right now, the UPA program has $122 million under agreement. And basically, all that money is, for the most part, sort of parked and protected. Folks then make monthly payments based on their income.
Sure.
So we get some amount of money in, we're not, but those agreements can be over time or at our lowest tiers, there are ones that are $0 a month that can take a long time.
Okay, and Deputy Commissioner Bethel, on water, do you have any figures on that along the same lines?
Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning.
Michelle Bethel, Deputy Revenue Commissioner. So for water, in fiscal 18, we had about 34,000 total payment agreements, protecting about 33.5 million.
Oh, wow, okay. And is that also increased as time is going on?
Yes,
Okay.
and so for FY19, right now, we are at 17.1 million in all of our payment agreements and protecting $18 million.
Okay, that's great.
And that includes TAP, of course.
Okay.
That's in there as well.
And obviously, the added benefit that people keep their water on. Which is
Absolutely. That's
a
our
good thing
goal,
to do.
to keep their
Yes.
water on, absolutely.
Right. All right, thank you. Thank you on those answers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Morning, Council President, and good morning. And I want to echo Council President Clark and Councilman Greenlee's comments that I think we all feel you're doing a good job, so thank you. And I just want to go back in time when I first came here. I think the collection rate for real estate taxes, you heard different numbers, but I heard numbers from anywhere from 89 to 91%. Was that 3 years ago, roughly? Was that the range?
Yeah, that sounds about right, but I don't have those numbers in
That's
front
okay.
of me, but there
in
has
that
been a
range.
significant increase
Right.
over the years, and we're trending in the
And
right
now you're
direction.
at 96.1, heading up. And of course, we'd love to be at 98 or 99, but we're getting closer. And give us an idea today of the total real estate collections that you collect, including the school portion. Is that in the 1.7 billion range or 1.65? What is the range of that?
Yeah, it's above, I don't know if I have the exact number, but it's above $1.5 billion in collections. Yeah.
And so when we talk about an increase in collections of even taking the higher number of 91 to 96, it's a 5% increase, or about $75 or $80 million more per year you're collecting on an annual basis for the city.
Yes.
Okay. And then I noticed in your budget, your request over the last 2 years has an increase of about 5% for 2 years, or 2.5% per year, which is reasonable considering you're collecting $75 or $80 million more money for the city. So I think your budget request is for me, from my personal opinion, is modest, because you're doing something that we need to make sure we continue to do and continue to collect more delinquent taxes. So I applaud that. I mean, you're only talking about $1 million. You've only increased in 2 years 1.6 million, and you've increased the collection $75 to $80 million, and that's roughly 800,000 you're asking for more on a 2-year basis, a 2.5% increase. That's good. So I wanted to ask you a question on, Council President Clark touched on this, the sequestration that you were doing, that we asked you to increase last year. How is that program proceeding? Any idea of what the potential collection will be? And I know we've talked about this in meetings, but there's a finite pool of monies you can collect on sequestration. And also we talked about, maybe you could touch on the possibility of using it for the water department and sequestering some of those delinquencies too from commercial landlords who are renting the properties that aren't paying the water bills.
So sequestration has been a very powerful tool for the department. It's basically receivership, so it has to be an income-producing property, and then we can put that income-producing property in the hands of a receiver, and while it's in the hands of the receiver, taxes and other bills are paid, and then once the taxes are paid, we turn it back to the owner. And the advantage there is, it's less disruptive to tenants. It keeps the property in the hands of the owner, doesn't go through a foreclosure process, and it gets the taxes paid. So it's been a great program, and obviously we want to use that to its fullest potential. The challenge with that program is that there's only a limited pool, as you said, of properties that meet that criteria. So we ramped up, we continue to do that, and now we're starting to use it for water. And I'll let Francis Beckley speak a little bit about it, since it's a legal process that we're using.
Yeah, the big difference between I'm Francis Beckley, Chief Counsel to the Revenue Department. The critical legal difference from the tenant's perspective is that when we foreclose on property, the property is sold free and clear, and that includes free and clear of the lease. So the tenant can be evicted at the purchaser's discretion. If we put it into sequestration, the lease stays in place, the tenant has all the rights preserved there. Sequestration has brought in a lot of money. I believe we're over 80 million since we started the program a few years ago.
How much was
However, because of the limited, I'm sorry.
How much was the total you mentioned? 80?
Yeah.
80 million.
Yeah, but that's over 4 years, yeah.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah, no, and even today, as the program, because of the limited pool of properties that we can use, the average payment that we brought in FY16 from taking a property was $6,000. Today, the average payment is $2,300, because we started with the big ones, we've picked off the good stuff, but that's why now we are turning to water, because there are some rental properties with some significant water bills, in part because of the state law that protects tenants. You can't shut off the landlord's water as easily as you should, given that it's the landlord's responsibility, because you don't want to hurt the tenants. Putting something into water sequestration doesn't turn off the water, doesn't touch the tenant, again, doesn't touch the lease. So we're very enthusiastic about that process. We just started it. To date, we've collected $123,000 just in the first month, and we haven't even filed a single court case. We'll start actually filing the petitions for water sequestration next month.
That's great. So basically, in simple terms, if I was explaining this to someone who wasn't that familiar with collection, the word sequestration is basically landlords who haven't paid us their taxes. We notify their tenants to redirect their monthly rent to the city of Philadelphia. And when the landlords hear that, they say, wait a second, I better pay my taxes.
And even better than that, we don't have the power to redirect the rents, but we ask the court to redirect the rents. Our experience with real estate, and we anticipate it will be similar with water, is that half the landlords pay when they get the first letter telling us that we're going to do it. Another quarter pay the minute we file the petition with the court. So we're only actually even going into court and asking for the sequestrator to be appointed in 25% of the cases.
That's great. That's a great program. I'm glad they're using it in water. Let me ask you another question on the delinquencies, because I know you send me every month the list of all the taxes we have, the interest and penalties, and compare it to last year. And the outstandings right now have gone down, by the way, in the last few years. And it looks like your total outstanding of principal, not including water, is $288 million. And when you include interest and penalties, it's about $478 million. And what's interesting to me is that your commercial trash fee, which was, I guess, last year, it seems like it's gone down a bit, gone down about $1.5 million, but overall your tax collections have gone down about $16 million. You've reduced the outstanding. Are there any other strategies of collecting some of this other outstanding that we could implement?
I think that what we're doing is working. We're always looking for more tools, and it's a combination of having the tools and then matching the right tool to the right delinquency. So our data warehouse has really helped us with that. That has been extremely helpful in our analysis of receivables and automating some of the process, and we continue to develop that, automating the process, because it's not only having the tool, then identifying what delinquencies are right for the tool, but then it's getting it there as quickly as possible. So I think we have a great set of tools right now that we're using, and that it's just a matter of fine-tuning it and continuing what we're doing.
Well, let me ask you this question just so I understand. When you have on your delinquencies wage taxes, I guess, that are $19.6 million, interest and penalties total $32.5 million, can you explain wage taxes? Are those employers who have not remitted the wage taxes?
They are. They're employers who have not remitted wage tax. Now, in a lot of those cases, it's tax that was withheld and not remitted, not always. Sometimes it could be as a result of an audit where we reclassify subcontractors as employees. And then in that situation, if an employer has failed to withhold tax that they should have, the employer is liable. We don't go after the individuals. We would then assess the employer, and that would be their responsibility to pay that. But it is, it's all wage tax. It comes from different situations, and wage tax is a trust fund tax. So if it was withheld, then, that's very serious, that if it was withheld and not remitted.
I'm just asking the question because I'm trying to figure out if there's another tool we can give you in your toolkit to collect some of these outstanding amounts, because I see wages with interest and penalties $32 million and earnings are $22 million, and the BERT is $75 million. Like, are there any other tools we could help you utilize to collect those they're past delinquencies too, most of this?
Yes. As I said, I think we have the tools that we need. Some of those are really old delinquencies, and they may be defunct entities. So we really work on the receivables from two sides. We look at them to see collectability. Some will get written off after a certain point if we don't have liens in place that we think there's collectible. We've recently started executing on judgments, and we have found that some of these very old liens that we really did not think we would collect, that has been successful in getting us some collections. Some have been sizable collections, so that's a relatively new tool that we started using, and it's been effective. And now, our delinquent collections group is looking at how to utilize that more effectively, sitting down with the vendors that we use that do that to see how that. So that's a perfect example of, a new tool that we've been using that's really marked for certain delinquencies. So they're for, business tax delinquencies, and specifically very old delinquencies that have liens in place that we think, are still viable collections.
Another question on the beverage tax, which I know is a hot item. How much did we collect in 2018 on the beverage tax?
for you in just a second. Sorry.
And my other question is going to be is, do we have, I assume there's also delinquency in the beverage tax too?
So for FY19 so far, we've collected $57.2 million through March, and I hear we had a pretty decent month in April. I haven't seen the final figures yet. And we've had a really high collection rate with that too. So in the high 90s, I actually think it's one of the highest, like closer to 97, 98% collection rate. We've had some, we've started auditing, we've started doing a lot of compliance, and we've seen payments roll in through that as well. So the compliance there has been working pretty well.
That's good. That's very good. Okay. I have a different question I was going to ask you, and that has to do with some of the questions I had yesterday for the sheriff. The sheriff told us yesterday that they walk over his department's collections to revenue once a month. And he told us that those collections are not really documented in the city's budget or financial documents. Is this standard practice for departments to walk their collections to revenue?
Is we do have departments that walk collections over and run it through our cashiering group. So it's not unusual for that to happen.
And then, can we get a breakdown of how much the city receives from the sheriff's department in delinquent taxes and fees?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Can we get a breakdown of how much the city receives from the sheriff's department in delinquent taxes and fees?
Yes, we can get that to you.
Okay. And two quick questions. How do we as a city handle cash payments? For example, someone walks into MSB, pays a bill with cash. What happens then from the time the bill is paid to the time the cash gets deposited into our bank accounts? What does that process look like?
I can give you a quick overview, and if you want more detail, I can have Deputy Commissioner come up and...
Just give us a quick overview.
Yeah, I mean, taxpayer, it's essentially like a banking operation. A taxpayer comes in, comes to our window, pays a bill. There's a process that takes place to record that payment. The taxpayer is issued a receipt. That's one of the, now it's a detailed receipt. One of the improvements we made, suggested by Councilman Jones, was that taxpayers should leave with a receipt that really shows what year, what taxes, and we always furnished a receipt, but it didn't always have that level of detail. So now the taxpayer gets a receipt, a detailed receipt. The money is stored there in the desk. Person takes that. Then there's a process, a settlement process that takes place during the day, and the money is then stored in a vault until it is couriered to the bank.
Does that courier occur every day or once a week?
Yes, every day. And we're in the process of acquiring, working with the treasurer's office to acquire something called a cash vault, which is different than, that's the name of this process. Essentially what it is an ATM machine or a safe, a small safe that we make the cash deposits into. Once the deposit, and it's right in our payment processing area, once we make that deposit into that safe, it's now the bank's money, their responsibility to come and pick that up. From the time we put it in there, it starts generating, it's essentially deposited at the bank. So that would speed up the deposit process.
And then the last question is, lately, I don't know, maybe this is normal, but my office has received a lot of calls from constituents. I was actually stopped last night by someone who said to me, I sent the city my real estate taxes 3 weeks ago, and they haven't cashed the check. I'm just wondering, did they get it, or are they slow in cashing it? And I was wondering why that's occurring, and what is the procedure for that?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, the process that could happen, the process is we have a internal service level agreement that we're striving for 5 days. Any payment that comes into the city will be processed within 5 days. Many are much shorter than that. Some require research. So essentially what happens is we get payments that come in, and hopefully they have a payment coupon with it, and then it can go through our remittance processing system, which is automated, and we just run that through machinery, and that's the quickest process. Often we get payments that do not include a payment document. That goes to our exception processing unit. They have to do research and figure out where that should be applied. Sometimes it's easy because the memo section of the check will give us some indication. Other times, nothing at all. And there's times when it's not even the name and address on the check are not helpful, because it could be, an adult child paying real estate taxes for a parent. So that has to go through. But with all of that process, we're striving for 5 days. This year in particular, let me finish and then I'll give you the exception. Of course, most of the year is business as usual for the department, and tax season is not. So we ramp up staffing, we're prepared for it, but it's essentially, a tsunami of mail and payments. And we're going through that as quickly as possible. But for those days when we get our highest volume, there are times when we probably or possibly won't meet the 5 days. We track that daily. We know where we're at. Anytime we're not within 5 days, a report comes up. Deputy Commissioner is notified. An action plan of how we're going to get back to that level takes place. This year, we had a few instances of times when we got late mail from USPS. We're dealing with them right now to find out why that happened. By the time the mail got to us, and this was trays of mail, it was already more than a week, pushing 2 weeks late. So we processed it quickly, but to anyone external, they would see a 3-week delay. And that was probably 5 or less days on our part and more on the part of the USPS. So, and not trying to, pass the buck here,
Right.
but it's something that we monitor, especially during tax season, we monitor every day.
One last question, I'll be done. I know we talked about this 3 years ago, and that was the idea of getting to a point where the real estate tax bills could be sent out electronically. Are we getting to that point where if some of our population wants to receive their real estate tax bills and water and sewer bills, which are sent every month, that we will be able to be accomplished through email?
Yes, we're really close. We have a vendor. Last time we reported, I think we were still in the process of selecting a vendor. We have a vendor selected. Vendor's been on site. They're working through OIT, working with OIT and with revenue on implementation. And right now it's scheduled for implementation the fall of this calendar year. So, and that'll start with water, because we're sending out over 500,000 water bills per month. So that's really where the big impact is. And as taxpayers and water customers adopt that, we'll be pushing it out to real estate customers. The assumption is if you want your water bill that way, you're going to want your real estate tax bill that way too. So that's how we'll be doing it. There'll be a lot of marketing around it to get people aware that this new technology exists, and hopefully, we'll be able to attain a high adoption level.
And I think I saw a study that if we could get 60 to 70% of our population to be doing this electronically, water and sewer and real estate, water and sewer is a big piece because it's every month, we could save $4 or $5 million in cost of envelopes and postage.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that number, but 60-70% adoption rate will take a while. I think we haven't really talked to the vendor that specifically about adoption rates for the first year, but I would think, looking at other jurisdictions, a 10% adoption rate in the first year.
Over 3 or 4 years, you'll get to 60 to 70%.
Yes. Yeah, that's the goal.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you to you and your department for what I believe is a very good job you're doing for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Taubenberger.
Council President, thank you very much. Commissioner Breslin, I want to thank you for always willing to listen and doing some of the hard work to resolve the problems that we have, and it's greatly appreciated.
You're welcome.
Thank you. What you outlined earlier is the delay, and as Councilman Dom spoke about earlier, people do ask us, and we're the city council people, hey, you got my check, and it's been a month or it's been 3 weeks, and your explanation, I get it, but the average person on the street may not get it, because what you had just said really sparks me to ask the following question, and it says, what is a couple of days delay on our end, really the public sees as a 3-week or maybe even a 4-week delay on their end. They never, look at blaming the post office.
No.
They look to blame us. Is there anything we can do with the post office to make that work
Well, I think really
better, make it work better?
a bunch of the things that we talked about, that we just recently talked about, are really going to come together to help this problem. We'll go back to the ITS system. Getting a new integrated tax system is just going to make it easier for people to do business electronically.
Okay.
And the more checks, the more payments that come in electronically, the less we have to process. So that is a big piece. If we can lower volume, we can process quicker. In addition, we talked about, Councilman Dom just mentioned e-billing, so we have that going. So,
Okay.
And we've also done something called, it's our modernized e-file, which we launched a few years ago. We continue to expand. That's the ability of having our tax forms in the software packages that professional tax preparers use. Professional tax preparers want to file electronically. That's the way they generally file with the IRS. That's the way
Understood.
they file with the state. They want to do it with the city. We actually have representatives right now at a national conference on modernized e-file, meeting with the software companies to try to get more of them to adopt our taxes into their software. And the key there is most taxpayers who file electronically that way through their preparer also pay that way electronically, and that reduces the volume. So as we see more electronic services and more self-service, we'll be reducing the volume, that tsunami I referred to of tax returns that come in a very short period of time, and we'll be able to get through that quicker. So I think we're making progress. We continue to make progress. Sometimes taxpayers are holding us to standards that, seem reasonable, but they may not understand that a taxing operation is different than a general business. Often we get the quote that if we ran our business like this and waited this long but if they saw our mailroom, on April 13th, 14th, and 15th, they'd understand the challenge in opening all this mail, getting everything processed. It's significant.
I get it, and then I understand also as technology changes, things will get better. But there are a lot of senior citizens in this city, a lot. I'm the chair of the Committee on Aging, and the problem is they still see that. That is still a problem to them, particularly some of these people that check their accounts every day, and there's some that do that. And it doesn't make us look good, aside from the technology, and I think you're heading in the right direction. And I think in the long term, you're right. But Mrs. Smith, who sent in her check this year, and will probably do it again next year, still will run into the same problem, the same situation.
Well, that's interesting, and I can relate.
And that's the biggest problem to them. They don't want to hear about the technology coming, and I think you're right.
Yeah.
But, what can we do with what's going on now with the technology?
Well, I agree with you, and I can relate. I have a 92-year-old mother who calls me every time a check doesn't
There you
clear
go.
the bank.
You know it firsthand.
And sometimes I'm the one holding the check, and I haven't deposited it, so that's embarrassing. But in any event, what we realize is we have a lot of younger taxpayers that want
correct.
to pay electronically. So we're not really looking at the progress happening because our senior population is going to adopt electronic filing.
No, they're not going to do it.
They're not going to. But as we have it available, and the people that want to do, and it reduces the overall volume, then those seniors who are still sending in checks will see the benefit, because we'll be able to process those checks faster. And we're seeing that. We track our numbers for electronic filing and electronic payment, and they're trending in the right direction. And really the thing that's holding us back is technology. We don't have the technology to really make it easy, and the ITS system will do that. It'll make it very easy for taxpayers to pay electronically. We think we'll get a good adoption rate then. It'll reduce our volumes, and then you'll see that 5-day level even reduce.
Well, that I think a 5-day level is very reasonable, very, very reasonable. Conversely, though, when you said because of the Postal Service, it in reality is a 3-week level. I think that's what you just said.
It was, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. Then people start getting a little antsy
Yeah.
and say, hey, Are they going to take my check? I thought they needed the money. I want to do my duty and pay, and they haven't cashed the damn check.
And that's a big problem for us too, because as we hear those complaints,
Yeah.
we're looking at our internal process, because, we're hearing one message inside that we're within 5 days or we're at 6 days, and then we're saying, well, we have taxpayers who have said 3 weeks, and we were really baffled until the tray of mail came in and we saw the postmark date and realized this mail has been out somewhere. It's kind of in a black hole for 2 weeks, and then it appears.
Can we work with a postal service and
We
find out
are.
where that black hole
Yeah.
is? Because
Yeah.
I will have to say, a 5-day or a 6-day delay, that's reasonable. And I think most people would accept that as reasonable. But the fact that the postal service is not helping us and that mail isn't moving, that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, and we have a good relationship with them, and once there's problems, we contact them, we let them know, and
All right.
we've had this happen several years ago, and it was resolved, and now it seems to have reappeared, so we're working again to get
Well, I'd
this
like
resolved.
to be, if you could, keep me posted, because once again, I'm the chair of the Committee on Aging. I'd like to know, what is going on with that, because the questions are coming to us.
Okay,
And Council President, I have really one more question here, and that is, you had described in Councilman Dom's, your testimony to Councilman Dom's question, the many checks are then put in a bank vault, which is in our. Are we, once it's in the bank vault, are we accumulating interest on that? Or is there no interest in those accounts?
no interest till it's deposited, but as I said, we have a pickup every day.
Do
So-
we, on any of our bank accounts, do we receive any interest? I mean, I know people are quick to charge us interest if we owe money.
Yeah, we do,
Okay.
yeah.
And how much is that about?
I don't know, it'd be more, the treasurer's office would know the interest rates.
Well, if you could help us find that.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
People want to know what happens.
Yeah, and as I said, once we go to these, what they call cash vault, then that'll change it, it'll even speed it up by a day.
Well, a day is critical in these things. I
Yes,
mean, yeah.
it's a lot of
Those
money.
24 hours mean a lot, so, okay. Commissioner, thank you very much. Council President, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I want to thank you very much for your testimony and continue to do good work. Thank you.